Hello, my name's Savannah, this is Captain, and you're watching Nerdy Cat 96. So, thank you so much for joining me for my very first segment of In the Kitty Corner with Captain. So, basically, this segment is just like a book discussion. I just wanted to call it something fun and put a cat in the video. We're under a staircase right now in my library, which in my first video you saw the other side of my library. A little like Harry Potter type area for me to just sit and read my books. Today, in the Kitty Corner with Captain, the book that we are discussing is actually a play, but it's in book form. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf by Edward Albee. If you're like me and you weren't alive in 1962, which is when this play was written, you might have some trouble with like the linguistics. Definitely some phrases that are relevant in the 1960s that aren't as like understandable today. So there were a couple times when I wasn't entirely sure what was going on, but for the most part it was pretty understandable and it was very funny. It was definitely a dark comedy and it was a very absurd play. And that's not something that I'm like super used to reading. It's about two married couples. This play was written to expose the falseness of this like big happy family ideal that was very prominent in the 1950s and 60s. It does a very good job of that. There are four characters. George and Martha are one married couple. They're older. And then Nick and Honey are a younger couple. Nick and George both work at this university where Martha's father is the president of the board, I think. Nick is a new biology teacher. And Nick and Honey go over to George and Martha's house really late at night this one night for like drinks. They start playing these like games that are just, I mean, they're not really games. It's hard to explain. But it's very, very interesting and very enjoyable. I am going to be delving into a lot of the things that happen in this play. Or if you haven't read this play and you don't want to be spoiled, then I wouldn't watch this video. Okay. Before we can answer the question of who's afraid of Virginia Woolf, we must first answer the question, who's Virginia Woolf? Virginia Woolf was the person who popularized stream of consciousness style of writing. She popularized getting inside the minds of characters so that the readers could fully understand everything that was going on inside in addition to what you could see on the outside. Basically, the Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf joke is essentially the same thing as Who's Afraid of Living Without False Illusions. So that is something that I looked up that Edward Albee said about his play. Let's talk about the characters a little bit. George and Martha are the older couple. Martha was 52. George is 46. George looks older, but he is 6 years younger than her, and he likes to bring that up a lot. George is a history professor at the university that his wife's father is the president of. So the reason that Martha married him, basically, was that she thought that if she was able to marry one of the professors, that her father would kind of push that particular professor's like success. So she married George. But I mean, it says that she like fell for him too, so it wasn't like she was just marrying him for his future success. But her father thought that George was too weak to be successful. He wasn't really a leader type, even though it doesn't seem like Martha works or does anything of value. She's really disappointed in her husband for not being able to prove himself to her father and be successful. And they fight about that, kind of, or just talk about it a lot in front of their guests, Nick and Honey. They are really nasty to each other, but then they're always laughing, so it seems like they're just, like, joking, but, like, very, very much at each other's expense. So it was really funny to, like, watch, but also kind of, like, horrifying at the same time. And then we have a couple, Nick and Honey. Oh, ugh! Your breath smells so bad, Captain. Honey is 26, and she's very, like, plain and small and, like, kind of boring. Nick is 28, and he is a professor of biology. He's doing research on chromosomes and how we can, like, eradicate disease and kind of make designer babies, basically, I think is the gist of his research was about. According to George, then everyone would just be the same and all look exactly like Nick, whom he feels very threatened by because Nick is very ambitious and young. Nick is kind of bored with his wife, Honey, who's very, like, bland. We find out the only reason that they were married, Honey thought that she was pregnant, but she had a hysterical pregnancy, or phantom pregnancy, so it was, like, a purely psychological thing. Later, Martha and Nick go and try to have an affair. Martha's very showy about it. She very obviously wants to make George jealous, and then she reveals to Nick, after he is impotent because of all of his booze, the only person who can make her happy is George. So, like, even though it seems like they're totally miserable, he's, like, apparently the only person who can bring her happiness. And then throughout the whole play, George and Martha allude to having a son. It seems like something horrible happened to the son. At the end, George says that he got a telegram about their son, and he had died in a car crash. Martha said, like, you've killed him. Like, you don't get to decide these things. And I was like, what? Like, is he a character in a book or something? Like, I was very confused. That was one thing where I didn't entirely understand what had happened. Martha and George were never able to conceive, so they created a fictitious son for themselves, I guess 21 years ago, and George decided to kill him off. I'm still very young. I just got married very recently. I haven't been through all these phases, I feel like a lot of people go through, where they're, like, disgusted by each other and stuff. It was a very interesting read. It did make me a little bit scared for my future in my marriage. I really don't think, I don't see any of these things or types of problems in my future. Like, I'm already extremely proud of my husband for the success that he's had in his career. So I really don't see that going away at any time. We didn't get together because I was pregnant or anything. And we didn't know each other since we were 6 either. But we both had prior relationship experience. So definitely, I feel like we won't have any of these issues that are happening in this book. But being married and having a house and having kids and a dog was the ideal for family life and everything back in the 1950s and 60s. I definitely think it's no longer really as idealized. I feel like that ideal is still present in my own mind, even though I wasn't alive in the 50s and 60s, just because it is the life that my parents gave to me. Those things aren't really a marker of your success in life. You definitely, like, you don't have to ever get married. That's not something that is a measure of success. Having a house, it makes me happy because I don't have to listen to neighbors through the wall and below me and stuff anymore. I feel like it's a lot more private, and that's something that's important to me personally. I definitely have this, like, pressure to have kids. I really want to have kids. It's not like I feel societal pressure, but I do for some reason feel like if I am unable to have children, that detracts from my worth. So that was something interesting that I feel like I learned about myself through reading this play. It was very funny and honest, and just kind of showed this absurd view of what people think is important in life. That's all I really have to say about this play. Thank you so much for watching. I make videos every Wednesday. My name's Savannah. You can follow me on Twitter at nerdycat1996. If you want to check out my Goodreads, my URL is goodreads.com/SavannahM09. I'm not super active on there right now, but I will try to be a little bit more active on there. If you want to follow me on Snapchat, I'm not super great about posting stories or anything either, but my username for Snapchat is, is Slammy16. The cats and I will hopefully see you next week. Say goodbye to the camera, Captain!